if I'm supporting myself, I'm able to state my conviction and my belief calmly without attacking the belief of others and without defending myself.
Bill Wilson, co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, wrote in 1952, "If we examine every disturbance we have, great or small, we will find at the root some unhealthy dependence and its consequent demand." Wilson suggested that if we could identify and continually surrender these unrealistic and unrealizable demands, that we may then be able to accomplish what he imagined to be the recovery's next frontier, something he called emotional sobriety. Flash forward 70 years and join psychotherapists and best-selling authors Tom Rutledge and Dr. Alan Berger, who have taken up the mantle of exploring Bill Wilson's new frontier. Welcome to Emotional Sobriety.
Welcome to Emotional Sobriety, the podcast, as opposed to, I'm not sure what, but the emotional sobriety, that mine, yours, or we should say in pursuit of emotional sobriety. I'm Tom Rutledge, back here with our producer, Patrick Newman, and the good Dr. Alan Berger. How are you guys doing?
I'm in Nebraska right now. I'm in a little town called Grand Island, Nebraska. And I flew in yesterday.
That's ironic. A Nebraska and a town named Island.
I know.
It's like
nothing islandy about it. Trust me.
Well, I mean, where's the beach,
the island
man?
In Hawaii to me. When I got here, I said, "What happened? Where'd the island go?
Where's the beach, man?"
Sounds like it should be a resort where Jaws filmed at, right? Grand Island Resort, Jaws 4.
Yeah.
And now these are sharks that have been now mutated by all the contamination.
Well, now we're back to Saturday Night Live. Land Shark is like.
You remember when those Sharknado films came out?
Oh God, yes.
Huh? What did they do, about 5 of those things?
Oh, there's a lot of, there were a lot of. I've heard Patrick knows more about that. He's the film buff among us, but it's like, and I have never watched all of them, but I have watched some of just flipping around. I mean, they are hilarious.
I think the last one I watched is that one of the sharks ate a pregnant lady whole. And she delivered the baby while she was inside the shark, and then somehow they shot the shark and brought it back to Earth, and because it was in outer space, because somehow these were related to aliens. I don't know how they got
because it was a sequel, so we had to go out. You have to go to space for sequels.
Oh, it was hilarious. What about those, Patrick? Sharknadoes. How many have you watched?
There's at least 5, and you guys had me thinking about. Michael Caine was in a Jaws sequel. I think he was in Jaws: The Revenge, and he was asked in an interview about, have you seen Jaws: The Revenge? He's like, I've not seen Jaws: The Revenge, and by all accounts, it is terrible. However, I have seen the house that it built, and it's fantastic. One of my favorite Caineisms.
I love. He's a practical man. It's like, I like it.
One of my favorite actors, Michael Caine.
Well, where are we? Where are we on the Dr. Alan Berger book?
Realizing that nobody is coming, and I think this would be a good opportunity for us to talk about emotional self-support rather than environmental support.
Well, that's good, because one of the things I and you guys tell me if this fits into. I think this fits into this category. It's like, when I'm talking to people about recovery, and when I say recovery, I don't mean just addiction recovery. I just mean that recovery, just recovery mindset, that pursuit of being better, of in our terms, emotional sobriety, of being the best version of ourselves we can be. We're like our cell phones or anything else that has a rechargeable battery. It's like what we need to be able to do ultimately is hold the charge. We never need to be away from support altogether. That idea, most of us have stories of trying to be, the battery that doesn't need to be charged, but it's like
battery or whatever.
yeah, the bunny. But but we, sometimes, I mean, we have to find our way to be regularly charged. But the idea is we do have to be able to hold that charge, and it's like, and that's that self support to me. It's the idea of building that intrapersonal landscape, that those interpersonal relationships that are there to support us, where, well, to use, one of your lines, Alan, that I told somebody yesterday, and they loved it. And it was just because it's so catchy and easy to remember. The best of us in charge of the rest of us.
Yeah, right on. No, and that's what we're really looking to do. And as you're saying, when we say that let's say emotional sobriety is transcending environmental support to self-support, we're not saying that we don't need anyone. Let me read you something from Murray Bowen. Murray Bowen was a psychiatrist who brought in a very different way of looking at human behavior than existed when he became a psychiatrist. Everything when he became a psychiatrist was dominated by psychoanalytic thought or behavioral thought, right? It was either behaviorism or psychoanalytic. And he came in and he was really, I would call him the first person to introduce the concept of evolution into psychology. Okay. And how evolution shapes us and shapes our behavior. And because of that, because of his focus on that, he looked at the basic building block of life, which was cell growth and development, which involves differentiation. Cells, if they're programmed to become a certain thing, in their development towards becoming what they can be, they continue to differentiate from an undifferentiated state to a state where they have a very specific function in our
specialize.
Body.
They specialize.
They're specialized. Yeah. So they become our heart, or they become an eye, or they divide to become part of our, our stomach, our intestinal tract. I mean, when you think about the design and engineering of the human being, it's mind-blowing when you think about all of the program. Like if programmers had to program that on a computer, it would be lifetimes and lifetimes of trying to get that code together. And yet that happens to us automatically, right? It's just who we are. But so that's where he brought this ideas in, from this concept of differentiation in biology, and he applied it to psychology. Is that, my God, that what happens is that when we're born into a family, that we're born with an undifferentiated state, and we will be differentiated according to how differentiated our parents are and the culture is that we're born into.
Okay.
Which is bad news.
Right. I mean, right. The family is the organism.
That's right. He called it. He even called it a family ego mass, trying to still relate. Later on, he changed the term to nuclear family, but he was still connected to the psychoanalytic idea of an ego, right? And he called it a family ego mass, which is like this.
It sounds like a really scary diagnosis.
We were talking about Sharknadoes. We could do a family ego mass NATO.
I'm just thinking. I'm unfortunately, if I go to the doctor and they say, "I'm sorry, but we've discovered an ego mask," and my wife would go like, "Well, no surprise there." It's like
That's right. Well, really, we just probably came up with a new diagnosis, actually.
I'm sorry. There's an ego mass. Maybe we can just do surgery.
We all suffer from an ego. Undifferentiated. It's got to be an undifferentiated ego mass. Because differentiated ego mass functions much differently.
It's a bit what we were talking about last night in the Thursday night group, where people think that to say don't take something personally becomes I don't care. With differentiation, for lack of a better way to say it, you care better, more effectively.
That's exactly. That creates a much better space, right, for a healthier connection to another human being, right? Because that's what we're really talking about. Then he goes on to say, for me, differentiation involves the ability to remain an emotionally contained entity.
Okay.
An emotionally contained entity. An ECE. An emotionally contained entity while in the middle of emotional chaos. I love that. You remain an emotional.
Well, yeah, the sort of the calm within the storm,
chaos, right?
Yeah.
While still relating actively to every person in the field. So that's where there's no distancing. You're still connected. You're still in relationship to. You're not breaking the relationship. You're staying connected to the person.
Right.
And to do that, you have to be able to support yourself, because as soon as I'm dependent on you, then what's going to happen is I'm going to try to control and regulate how you behave, instead of just, accepting that you are who you are and to deal with that, right? Instead of me trying to control you, it's me being in relationship to you.
Well, and one of the things I would want to make clear, kind of reemphasize, for listeners or readers of your book is that because we tend to be kind of critical, we tend to be pretty critical of ourselves and turn on ourselves with this stuff. Is when we're doing that, what you're saying, if the kind of control we're talking about there, for the most part, or not always, but for the most part, is an unconscious process. And the intention behind it, though misguided, is for me to be okay. I'm really trying to be okay. It's like, so part of what, if we're selling something here, it's like, there's a better way to be okay.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not just about, it has to do with, catching where we have messed up, where we have made mistakes in relationships and we need to change some things, even make amends, things like that. But for the most part, this is about improving ourselves. Yeah. This is about getting better at getting our own needs met. So that, and which makes us more impactful, more effective in working with other people. I mean, you don't have to do this for a living to have that, but it's like, the truth is, the better we take care of ourselves as therapists, the better we are for the people that we try to help. I kind of quoted Dee Dee, my wife, before about that, where she calls that positive selfishness. Self-focus that not only doesn't harm another person, it actually benefits other people.
I was going to ask how does one stay independent in a relationship, and yet present?
Good question. So let me. I was going to say this. So let me define self-support, or give an example.
Good.
If I'm supporting myself, I'm able to state my conviction and my belief calmly, without attacking the belief of others, and without defending myself.
Without having to state it in a way that is oppositional to someone else's belief.
Yeah. So that would be self-support, is see that I'm clear about what I want. I'm clear about what's going on and what's happening. So I think, did I give the example? I think I did. I gave the example about the hamburgers and cooking the hamburgers. Did I share that in one of our shows, Patrick? Does that ring a bell?
No, I don't think you have yet.
Oh, this is the burger on hamburgers. Sorry. The other day, typically at home, I do more of the cooking than Jess. Mm-hmm. God bless her. She's a great mom, but she did not develop much of an ability to cook food that is consumable. So I think most of her.
She's a scientist. Come on.
I know. I think that's what happens. She gets way too into the science of the whole thing, and then and I go into the taste of it, right? So I typically cook things. The other thing is, she comes out of a family where her dad's a medical doctor and her mom's a nurse. So part of the problem with her cooking is she's so concerned about undercooked food, because it'll get you sick. And in her family, there was a big focus on identifying every physical threat and preparing for them. Germs, right? Mm-hmm. Bacteria, viruses. I mean,
scientists. They're all scientists.
They're all scientists.
Absolutely. They're all scientists. Yeah.
Right. So I was out, I think Cece and I were blowing leaves or doing something outside. We were having some fun and playing, and I had to take care of a few things. So I wasn't able to get dinner cooked. And I think I had to speak at a meeting that night. So it was at Monday night. I was going to be speaking at a meeting. So I had a bit of a time crunch. So she said, I'll go ahead and cook dinner. And we were going to have hamburgers that day. Mm-hmm. Well, I like my burger medium rare. Mm-hmm. I like to have that red meat in the middle. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, red meat to Jess says, I'm going to die of some kind of a poisoning in this hamburger. So for her, it's like, keep it away from me, right? So So she's cooking. I'm outside, and I come in, and she and Maddie are sitting down to eat, and Cece and I go to eat, and I go to get a burger.
Mhm.
And there was this thing on the plate. It must have been a hamburger at one point in time. I'm not sure what it was cooked to look like at this point, but it wasn't the burger I wanted, and that I was looking forward to just taking a bite of and feeling that red, juicy meat just drool down my face, run down my face, and then lick it off, right?
It was some kind of a disc. Right?
I don't think there was any flavor left in the goddamn thing, right? It had gotten cooked out. So I looked at this and I said, look, honey, in the future, what I'd appreciate is if you cook a burger for me, cook it medium rare. And I said it, I think, very calmly, right? And stating clearly what I want. She goes, I am so sick and tired of this. I mean, all I get is criticism about how I cook. Damn it, I can't do anything right, according to you. I can't cook right, so I'm just not going to cook anymore. You should just do all the cooking. And I said to her, trying to contain myself, I said, I'm asking you for what I'd like. If you don't want to do that, you can tell me you're not interested in cooking to my specifications, and then I would simply say, I'll cook it. You don't need to do it. I'll throw it on when I get in the house. But what I'm not okay with right now is that when I tell you what I want, you turn it into that I'm criticizing you, and therefore I should shut up. And I'm not going to be silenced because you're taking what I'm doing critically. I appreciate the effort you put in. I see what you tried to do to help and cooperate tonight. That's not missed on me in any way, and I want you to know I see that. But I'm not going to silence myself and not say what I want because worry about whether you're going to take offense at it or not. And so she looked at that for a minute, and then I said, look, and this is in front of Maddie and Cece. I said, really think about it, Jess. Is the message that you want to send to the kids that they need to not speak up for what they want out of fear that somebody might feel criticized if they say what they want? Is that how you want them growing up? I said, look, I know some of the stuff you struggled with in your family, and I know that went on more than you really liked, that you got shut down a lot in this stuff. And so I don't think that's the message. It's sure not the message I want the kids. I want them to say whatever they want, and if somebody else has an issue with it, then that other person can deal with that issue with it. I said, just think about that. I don't need an answer from you right now. I'm going to go cook my burger. So I went in the other room, and I cooked my burger. And I supported myself. Now, a couple times I got a little bit more intense in it, when I felt like she was trying to, what I felt, be silenced. I shouldn't be saying what I want, that kind of stuff. And I overrode that, and I felt so good. I can't tell you. At the end of that connection, and the end of that transaction, I should say, I really felt like I did a great job holding on to myself. Later on that night, she came to me and she said, you were right. She goes, you were just telling me what you wanted, and I don't ever want the kids to feel that they can't speak up for themselves. And, and that was her way of saying, I'm sorry, for what went on. I said, look, I appreciate that. From my side, I felt good about the fact that I wasn't going to be silenced, and I think it was important for the kids to hear that part of it. So to me, that was an example, and it was such a moment to celebrate because I'm often not that clear on it and not that well.
Well, it takes you think about hindsight gives you get clearer later, and then you come back and say this is what I wish I had said, but you actually
in that moment there was no afterwards. There was no thought about I wish I would have, right? None at all. The only thing I wish I would have said is I'd like also, cook the burger medium rare and have more sex with me. But I thought, thought it might have,
you might, a good therapist might say, let's table that, and we'll do, we'll do that in a different.
Sometimes it's good when we don't say what's on our mind.
That's right. Well, actually, that's an interesting point, because one of the things that tell me if I get this right. One of the things that you're doing here, and this falls in that category of that terminology that I love that you use, that you said you called it. I remember the first time you ever used it, I wasn't sure what it was, and I love it. It's like it's holding on to yourself. Stand up for yourself, you win. When you stand against others, you lose. It's like, and it's like that's what I was hearing with that. But the other thing is, when I identify with a lot, because that when you get to that place, there's a lot of energy in me that is there to, and part of it is reflecting on basically it comes from reflecting on our history. I think you and I probably have this in common, where in order to be able to pull this off, what we need to do is manage our own energy. Yeah. So we're like, and what I heard you saying is if we had a film of the intrapersonal process while you're doing that, you've got guys at the board, pulling stuff back. It is a thing where you can apologize for how you said something without apologizing for what you're saying. Yeah. You can, it's like we're going to go back and take over, but it sure works better in that example you're talking about, is because you held on to yourself through that process. You stood with yourself, for yourself, and including the fact that basically they're making it clear that there is no expectation that you have that she has to agree with you about cooking your hamburger.
That's right.
It's like you can actually say, I don't want to do that. I'm not very good at that. It's like, I'm a scientist. I don't want to kill my husband, with raw meat. It's like,
I'll just kill him with burnt meat. No.
No. And by the way, tell Jess when I come to your house, I want her to cook my burgers. That's my burger. I don't want that one you have. I want Jess cooking mine.
I've in my relationship, I think that I am often guilty of behaving in the way that Jess did in that anecdote, because I'm a people pleaser, and I don't always take it as well when I sincerely, when I miss my mark and what I'm trying to do, and it could be something as banal as what we're cooking. I think we've even had arguments about, like, I'll pick a restaurant and then the meal, the food isn't to spec of what she likes. And I take it personally. She didn't make it the way you liked it. And so probably her initial anger, right, was like a little bit of anger at herself, right, for not being able to get it right.
I don't think so. It was anger at me.
Oh, it was? Okay.
It was totally anger at me. You're too demanding and stuff like that. But look, two things come up here, and then I want to bring it back to the no one is coming. So the first thing is that, and I've lost the two things now that I've said. There's two things here. So of course that happens at this age. The two things are, one is that every conflict, every struggle like that is obviously, the subject is not the subject.
Right.
So what is the subject? The subject is how much togetherness and separation or individuality is going to exist in the relationship. So those struggles are negotiating the amount of individuality and togetherness we're going to have. Mm-hmm. Follow me? So if the pressure is you've got to feel the same way I am, you got to just appreciate whatever I put on the table and be grateful for it, that togetherness is emphasized. What you want and how you feel is not important. You have to just appreciate what you get. Do you follow me?
Right.
So that's, now the other side of it is how much individuality. And certain things might be, well, I'm going to do this, and I'm not going to pay attention to what anybody else wants, and I'm just going to do this my way, and I'm going to cook it this way, and I don't care what anybody else feels. That's too much separateness or individuality. Mm. What we've talked about is that emotional sobriety, and Bill Wilson even said it, is balance. Mm-hmm. Is you balance the individuality or the separateness in the relationship with the togetherness. And that's what Tom was saying. When I stand for myself, I'm not standing against togetherness. I am just defining myself. And the more room there is for our separateness, the the better quality togetherness we're going to have. And everybody needs to hear this. Separateness is not a disruption of connection. It is another dimension of it. And if we understand it that way, then we can embrace it and not get the anxiety that says, my God, if you don't think the same way about me, then we can't have a good relationship. Right. And a lot of us, that's unconscious on our part, this anxiety about, my God, if there's too much individuality, we're going to have no togetherness. So we all better think alike. I mean, we all better think the same way. And that's why so many relationships die on the vine.
What we're asking ourselves is, if when there's a conflict with that, is what meaning am I attaching to this? You know, because it's like, that's what I remember being in couples therapy, you know, with Dee Dee and saying, you know, and basically saying, you know, to the therapist, look, I've asked her to do this, I've asked her to do this, and she doesn't do this. And so she's just saying, fuck you to me, you know, and that's what it felt like. It felt like it was, I mean, talk about the most personal. It was like, you know, and I had a wonderful therapist. Her name was Mary Elizabeth, and she had nice wheels on her chair, and she would often roll up close to me in the session. And I remember her just saying, and it's based on a lot of relationship we have, but she said, that's not what it means. That's not what she's saying. I remember saying, well, how do you know? And she said, because I checked. She said, I've talked to Dee Dee, and Dee Dee was right there. She looked at her again. She said, are you saying fuck you to Tom? And Dee Dee goes, no, absolutely not. And, you know, and the challenge was for me in that moment is to believe them, you know, rather than sit there and defend, no, and because the old me, you know, out is just fucking survival. It's an old defense. You know, it's like, it's not going to get me anywhere positive in the relationship to win that argument that my wife is saying, fuck you. It's like, that's not a good thing. And the truth is, she wasn't. I still don't understand it. You know, I still can feel offended if she doesn't do something that she knows. But it's like, what I know is, and believe completely, is the meaning I have attached to it is not accurate. Makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah. You know, what's hard for me is when you describe, Ellen, going to the other room and kind of waiting out the storm in those hours that pass until you end up having the resolution conversation with her. Mm-hmm. I think that's an important thing to observe in these conflicts.
Well, too, but let me say this to you. I wasn't waiting. I was resolved. Mm-hmm. So that's the other important thing is when I take care of myself that way, I don't need her to agree with me. I don't even need her to say, I see it, whatever. If she does, great. That's wonderful. But it's not a requirement. As soon as I said what I needed to say, and when I stood for myself, and especially when I cooked that burger, and I ate that burger just the way I wanted to, I was fine. There wasn't a need for her to do anything. But see, if I'm still dependent on her, then I need for her to come back and resolve it with me. So let's circle back to two things. I remembered the second thing, and then I want to go back to no one is coming. So what Tom just said was so important. See, if I'm interacting with my partner, one of the issues, you know, our consciousness can either be horizontal or vertical. Meaning, if I'm relating to you right now, here and now, we're in a horizontal connection, right? I'm right here, you're right here, we're talking about what's going on now. If in that situation, what I felt good about, and I've been working on this in my personal therapy, is I didn't go to here and the past. Here and then is what I call it. Mm-hmm. If I went here and then my wound about not being listened to and not feeling like there was any interest in my needs and my feelings when I was a young man, a young boy, would have surfaced, and I would have thrown a fit and gotten angry. Because that's how I dealt with that before. That young self, I've been taking care of. So he's not showing up so much in my relationship with Jess anymore because I'm handling him. I'm not looking for her to take care of him.
Yep.
So this becomes an important thing, is what Tom was saying, that really that ties into exactly what you were talking about, Tom, is that these things from our past are going to surface. My job to deal with those. And when the no one is coming part is no one is coming to heal my childhood wounds, to take care of my childhood longings, to meet my infantile needs that were not met when I was a child. That's my work to do. And when I put that on my partner, I'm now depending on her. I'm expecting her to show up and reverse the experience I had in the past.
Right.
And that's
and we don't necessarily, by the way, for listeners, we don't necessarily know we're doing that, but it's like this.
That's all unconscious.
Yeah.
It's all out of our awareness. I mean, as you do the work, you become aware of it. See, that's part of this thing. I can't get away with some of the games I used to play. And I'm thankful for that, because when I start playing it, I go, oh yeah, there I go. I'm expecting her to take care of me again, and I'm looking for her support or her validation. I'm not giving myself it. I can catch those things today, but Patrick, this is so important because in every relationship, this is going to happen, and how a couple struggles with that is also going to determine the health of the relationship. So that ties into no one is coming. You see, when I don't meet my needs, then I'm going to project them into the world and expect you or the world to meet my needs. If I'm so disappointed as a child and that's a trauma from me, I'm going to expect my future that everything is going to go my way. And then that becomes an expectation. And then it's unconscious. I don't know it is. But I do know I'm suffering when things don't go my way.
Whether it feels like an expectation or you're not, if you don't know that you have the capacity and the responsibility for self-support, and it begins there, it's like you're, regardless of what you think is an expectation, you're going to be, we all are programmed. Talk about going back to the original program of our human nature. We're all programmed to try to get our needs met. If my internal process is, I don't see that as an option for that, which I did not used to see myself as the source of any of that. I am going to be trying to get that from other people, from other situations. And I'm going to be constantly disappointed, hurt, feeling injured, not being in the present tense, just leaning so far forward and off balance. We may have different language that we've used through the years with our clients, but we find these places where we have see things similarly. It's like what I'll tell people about inner child work is, I say eventually you get to the place where you go like, we have bad news and good news, and it's the same news, and that is you're the one. Okay. You're the one who's going to do this. It's like, so it's sort of like, it really is like nobody's coming other than you. Now, by the way, because the other part is what we're saying to people is, come on, it's a tough love message. Step up, man. You're going to do this. You have to do, if you're going to get through, it's like, if you're going to get through those experiences, if you're going to walk through even just the conversation, about the burger that you're talking about, it is like, the idea is that's a person who's taking responsibility for themselves. And the reason it's not unresolved, and boy, I identify with that part you were talking about, Patrick, of waiting, that anxious waiting. It's like, but the idea is, I also know you well enough, Alan, to know that whether, I don't know exactly how conscious that process was, but, your system involves a checking to be sure, if there are things that you screwed up there, a few things that were out of bounds for you, that basically what it is it's not about, did I upset somebody else? Did I step outside my own value system?
Yeah, that's right.
Because if I do that, then I have a problem. If I don't, I may not like the fact that my wife is upset with me right now. That's fine. It's like, but I don't feel shame for what I have done or how I've said it. I feel like, no, I have done that inside that's my best effort. I feel good about that. It's like, let that, is that your final answer? Yeah. Let that ride.
The grievances and resentments. I feel like that's the thing that not even just in emotional sobriety, but in recovery, that, those need to be, what would you say they need to be put to the side before a lot of this work can begin? Or there at least needs to be a parsing of those things?
What you got to process those, because underneath every grievance and resentment is this issue. And when you start to unpack those things and look at what is this grievance and resentment all about, you're going to find an unenforceable rule. You're going to find an expectation. You're going to probably find some emotional trauma from your childhood that relates to all this. Look,
back to the question: what meaning am I attaching to this?
That's exactly it. Is it, what meaning am I giving to this experience I'm having? And just because I am assigning this meaning, it doesn't mean that that's what it means to the other person.
Right.
And I've got to understand, and that's where, if I'm undifferentiated, I think, well, this is how it is, and now that's how it is. And I think that's how it has to be for everybody. You got to think my way. Yeah. And that becomes a real problem in relationships.
Yep.
But what I was gonna say is that the meaning, is going to be colored by my unmet needs, the way that I'm looking at the world, the kind of connection I have about it. And, like we said, I'm going to expect my present to reverse the trauma of my past.
The other thing that impacts the meaning is our fears. A weird way we try to protect ourselves unconsciously is go ahead and go to worst case scenario and expect it.
Yeah, that's right.
And people go like, well, how does that protecting yourself? It's sort of like, it's like me laying down on the floor and just saying, well, from here, I don't have very far to fall. It's like, I'm working with a couple right now where one of the couple, there's the relationship will do just that. We'll just go to the most negative thing. It's not because he wants it to be negative.
Yeah.
He wants quite the opposite, but it's like it feels, that's what feels, and it feels familiar to him because of what you're saying, is because it fits his past, his family life early on in his life perfectly.
Yeah. I was just going to say before is that one of the authors that I've really enjoyed reading through the years, in fact, I went to the Meadows and did a workshop with her, was Pia Mellody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she wrote that one book about codependence. I can't remember the exact title of it right now. But, in her lecture, when she was giving her talk on that, when I was there, she goes, I have two thoughts about it. It's great that that term got so popularized, but what happened is they thought they were discovering something new. Codependence, right?
Yeah.
All that. And when you look at it, and I hope I've been able to contribute this to the discussion in the field, is when you look at it, people were talking about emotional dependence way before we put the label on it as codependence.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that Pia says is she believes that all codependence is a result of a trauma in our childhood, an unresolved trauma. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I don't think it's the whole deal, but I think that there's a lot of truth to what she is saying about that. And many, many other people before her said the same thing, like Lowen and many other folks said, my God, these traumas happen to us, and then we start to develop a whole set of expectations about how life is supposed to be to reverse the experience of that trauma. Because
in the metaphor here, the various versions of our inner child, because we have inner children, not inner child, it's like, are absolutely persistent at wanting these needs met. And so the idea is, and I don't think this is really different from what Pia was saying with that, is the idea that the way I describe it for people sometimes is that at any, some deficits are bigger than others. Some are more impactful than others. And some things are more traumatic, will feel more traumatic than others. But where there are unmet needs, a part of that inner child, talk about fragmentation, a part of that inner child sets up camp and just waits. because that's what we see when we start doing therapy with people. We could go, I always tell this time travel. I said, we'll go back together and we're going to find the various aspects of your childhood where the child is still waiting for certain needs to be met. And this fits into the theme today perfectly because of course, what is that child, when we interview the child, what the child wants is for the parents to meet those needs. And so we say to the child, of course you want your mom and dad to do that. It's like, and we understand that. And again, bad news, good news for the child. The good news is we're going to meet the needs. Yeah. The bad news is they're not going to do it. I am. Only when we respect those needs rather than try to put them aside, diss them, whatever. Integrating. That's it. Yeah.
We're doing the Humpty Dumpty therapy.
That's right. It's right. You called us that the other day. It's great.
So look, I just want to emphasize one other point before we wrap up our show today, is what we're looking at is adaptation. And that's what we call, where we don't focus on pathology. Right. Because the way you hear Tom and I talk about things is we are an amazing species. Our ability to adapt to what's going on is phenomenal, and we are always adapting to remain as whole as possible given the circumstances that we're confronted with and the resources available. Mm-hmm. So in biology, this is how adaptation is defined. And just think about this psychologically because it fits perfect. Adaptation is defined as the evolutionary process whereby an organism becomes better able to live in its habitat or habitats. An organism becomes better able to live in its habitat or habitat. Well, that's what we had to do growing up. We had to find a way to adapt to what was going on to live as best as we could, given what was available. Mm-hmm. Yes. And that's why my faith in the human beings is phenomenal, because I believe that we're constantly adapting this way and growing, and that we can do this our whole life. And hopefully what we're sharing with you guys will help you on that journey. It was wonderful being here with you guys and being here in Nebraska. I'm excited about sharing tonight with all of these folks in recovery.
We'll look forward to hearing about that in our next recording.
Tell Nebraska hello.
Great to see you guys. Until next week.
Peace out.
Tend your life. Tend your myth. Cultivate your narrative with whomever you're with. Then with glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me. It ain't a crime to be a human. Never be ashamed to be yourself. Rest assured that whatever you're doing will entertain me like nobody else. So here's to us, my old friends, until it's time to drink the wine and break the bread again. With glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me.